I was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window of my apartment, feeling the city hum beneath me, the way sunlight sliced through the glass and caught on the gold threads of my silk blouse. My phone buzzed again, an alert I almost didn't want to see, but the name made my chest tighten. Mom. Today was her birthday. The woman who had mastered the art of turning kindness into guilt. The woman whose words once felt like home but later became walls I had to climb over. I ran my fingers along the smooth fabric of my blouse, trying to calm the knot in my stomach. The text was brief, almost casual, but heavy. Hope your day is going well. Maybe dinner tonight. I closed my eyes and let myself drift back for a moment, letting the memories wash over me. The sharp edge of her voice, the slammed doors, the glass she raised at family gatherings with that smug smile that could cut deeper than knives. I had left years ago, made a life on my own terms, yet her words still had the power to unsettle me. I set my phone down on the marble counter, listening to the distant rumble of the subway below and the soft clink of the wine glass I had poured myself. I knew what she would say, the tone she would take, the way she would try to make me feel wrong for existing on my own. And yet a part of me, stubborn, defiant, human, wondered if this would be the moment everything changed. I remember the day I decided I couldn't stay any longer. I was 19, my bedroom walls plastered with posters of city skylines and quotes about freedom I barely understood at the time. My mom, Vanessa, had come in with that same tight-lipped smile, the one that meant something was about to go wrong. "You can't just leave," she said, her voice calm but razor-sharp, like ice sliding across a window pane. "We gave you everything. How could you just throw it away?" I felt my hands tremble, gripping the edge of my desk. Everything I had worked toward, the part-time jobs, the classes, the small savings I had painstakingly built, was suddenly being dismissed as if my effort was nothing. "I'm not throwing it away," I said, my voice shaking but growing steadier with each word. "I'm building something for myself. Something that's mine." She laughed, short and bitter. "Mine? You think you're ready for the real world? The real world doesn't care about feelings, Avery. You'll fail, and then you'll come crawling back. That's how families work." I swallowed the lump in my throat, the sting of tears burning my eyes. I could feel every ounce of anger, every beat of fear, and every pulse of determination coursing through me. I looked down at the small silver locket my grandmother, Ruth, had given me on my 16th birthday, a locket she said would always remind me of my own strength. Opening it now, I felt that tiny heartbeat of reassurance, and I knew I couldn't let anyone dictate my life. "I'll prove it to you," I said quietly, almost to myself. "I don't need your permission." That night, I packed my small duffel bag with everything I could carry, clothes, books, a few keepsakes, and the locket. I left a note, simple and deliberate. "I'm leaving to find my own life. Don't look for me." It wasn't anger that propelled me forward, it was clarity. I was stepping out into a world that scared me, yes, but it was mine to navigate. And deep down, I felt a rush of something dangerous and exhilarating, freedom. As the city lights flickered through the train window that first night, I realized that leaving wasn't just about escaping her control, it was about discovering the version of me she could never imagine. Starting over was nothing like I had imagined. The first apartment I rented was tiny, a one-bedroom on the 5th floor of a building that smelled faintly of mildew and burnt coffee. My savings were thin, my confidence thinner, and yet there was something electric in the air, the knowledge that every choice was mine. I found work at a small marketing agency, under the guidance of a woman named Claire Whitman. Claire was brilliant, sharp, and unapologetically ambitious, the kind of mentor who saw potential and refused to let you settle for less. On my first day, she handed me a mug of lukewarm coffee and said, "You'll mess up. A lot. But if you're smart, you'll learn faster than anyone else." And I did. Nights blurred into mornings as I learned to pitch clients, craft campaigns, and prove myself in boardrooms filled with men who underestimated me at every turn. I kept my progress quiet, posting only vague updates on social media, letting the world see the curated version of my life, not the grind beneath it. My first real victory came with a small local business, an eco-friendly clothing startup. I pitched a campaign that was risky but heartfelt, and when it succeeded, I felt a thrill I hadn't felt in years. That first check, modest but meaningful, reminded me that independence wasn't a fantasy, it was becoming reality. Months turned into years. I saved, invested, and reinvested. I studied late into the night, learned the language of finance, and found ways to scale my skills into something bigger. By the time I turned 25, I had my own consultancy, a team I trusted, and clients who valued me not just for my work, but for my vision. Through it all, I carried my grandmother's locket close, sometimes hidden beneath a blouse or tucked into my wallet. It was a small reminder that no matter how much the world tried to define me, my strength and my story was mine alone. I never bragged to my family about my achievements. My parents assumed I was struggling, bouncing between jobs, living paycheck to paycheck. And, in a way, that was perfect. It gave me space to grow without judgment, without expectation, and without the constant weight of their opinions shaping my every move. I became a woman who could walk into any room with calm authority, who could negotiate contracts worth six figures and still smile politely when someone assumed I hadn't earned my place. Every small win was a quiet rebellion, a testament that leaving had been the right choice. And even though I had built this life in secret, the thought of one day letting them see the full truth, a life they had doubted, a woman they had underestimated, was both terrifying and deliciously satisfying. The invitation arrived in the form of a gilded envelope, cursive handwriting that immediately set my pulse racing. Mom's birthday dinner. Tonight. My stomach twisted, part anticipation, part dread. I had rehearsed every possible scenario, but nothing could truly prepare me for facing the woman who had raised me, judged me, and never believed I could stand on my own. The restaurant was a private room in an upscale rooftop venue. Candles flickered, casting soft shadows across the long oak table. Vanessa, my mother, was already seated, her heels clicking as she shifted impatiently. My younger brother, Dylan, looked uneasy, glancing between his mother and me as if he were waiting for a scene to unfold. I stepped into the room, holding my head high. My tailored blazer hugged me perfectly, my hair sleek, and my shoes silent on the polished floor. For a moment, they stared, confusion flickering across Vanessa's face, like she had expected some timid version of me to appear. You look, she began, but trailed off. Her voice caught somewhere between disbelief and irritation. I smiled, soft but firm, letting my presence speak before I said a word. "Thank you for inviting me," I said, sliding into the chair across from her. I let my eyes take in the details, the menus untouched, the crystal glasses, the scent of roasted garlic in the air. Everything elegant, curated, but nothing compared to the life I had built. When the waiter arrived with champagne, Vanessa raised her glass with a smug smile, the same expression that had haunted my childhood. But this time, I met her gaze and let silence do the work. I didn't need to rush. The revelation was coming, and suspense had a way of settling like dust before the storm. Finally, I spoke. "I want you both to know something. This life, the career, the clients I work with, they're all mine. Every dollar, every contract, every decision, completely independent." Vanessa's jaw tightened. Dylan's eyes widened. I continued. "I own the consultancy you doubted I could run. I negotiate contracts worth more than you imagined. I've built a life that isn't just stable, it's thriving." The room grew heavy with disbelief. Vanessa's lips parted, but no words formed. Dylan's hand trembled as he reached for his glass. They weren't ready for this Avery, or me, now. I placed my grandmother's locket on the table, letting it catch the light. "This," I said softly, "reminded me who I am when the world said I wasn't enough. And it brought me here." Vanessa's eyes welled with something I didn't recognize at first. Shock? Regret? Maybe both. Dylan's face paled as he realized that the sister he had once ridiculed, the girl they assumed would fail, had surpassed all their expectations. I leaned back, letting my words sink in, letting them see the life they had doubted, the woman they underestimated. And in that silence, I finally felt a sense of control, a quiet triumph that didn't need applause, only acknowledgement. After the initial shock settled over the table, I realized how much power had shifted. This wasn't about revenge. It was about setting boundaries, defining respect, and rewriting the dynamics that had controlled me for so long. I met my mother's gaze first. "Vanessa," I began, calm but firm, "I've built this life carefully, without interference, without judgment. If you want a relationship with me moving forward, there are conditions. These aren't punishments, they're commitments. And they start with honesty." Her lips pressed together, hesitant, but I continued. "No more guilt-tripping, no more criticism disguised as concern. I will not be manipulated, and I will not shrink myself to fit your expectations." Dylan shifted uneasily in his seat. "And me?" he asked. "You," I said, leaning forward slightly, "need to start taking responsibility for your own life. Stop relying on excuses or expecting others to bail you out. Learn to make decisions that reflect who you are, not who you think the world wants you to be." Vanessa's eyes stung with unshed tears, and Dylan's shoulders slumped as if he'd finally absorbed the truth. I wasn't the sibling who had failed. I was the woman who had thrived despite them. I took a slow breath, letting the room absorb my words. "I care about both of you. I want you in my life, but it can't be on the old terms. You need to let go of the habits, the toxic patterns, the fears that kept us apart. Change isn't optional, it's the only way forward." Dylan nodded quietly, his voice low. I want to try." Vanessa reached for my hand, trembling. I didn't know. I thought I was helping you. I didn't understand." "I know," I said gently. "But understanding isn't enough. Respect and boundaries are. I've lived years learning how to hold myself up, how to trust my own instincts. You can join me, but you must meet me halfway." There was a pause, filled with the hum of the city below and the quiet clink of cutlery. I let it linger. I wanted them to feel the weight of these words, the gravity of what had been lost, and what could now be reclaimed. Finally, I added, "We can rebuild. But it has to be real this time. No pretending, no conditions that serve only old patterns. Growth, honesty, and care, those are the new rules. I am giving you the opportunity to meet me here, on my terms." Vanessa nodded slowly, and Dylan offered a tentative smile. It wasn't perfect, it would never be, but it was a start. The room felt lighter, not because the past had disappeared, but because the future had a framework that didn't include fear, judgment, or limitation. For the first time in years, I felt fully in control, not of them, but of myself, my story, and the relationships I was willing to nurture. Weeks passed, and change was slow, but it was real. Vanessa began to speak differently, softer, genuinely listening instead of reacting. Dylan started taking initiative at work, calling me for advice instead of excuses. They were learning, stumbling, but moving forward, and I felt a quiet pride that had nothing to do with control and everything to do with growth. One morning, I held the small silver locket my grandmother had given me years ago. It glinted in the sunlight as I ran my fingers over its smooth edges. I thought about the girl I had been, the trembling hands, the silent fears, the nights spent imagining freedom as a distant dream. And I thought about the woman I had become, steady, capable, unshakable, yet still human. I realized that leaving had never been a betrayal. It had been a declaration, a claim to my own life. Every struggle, every sleepless night, every small victory had brought me here, to this balance between independence and compassion. Vanessa called one evening, her voice tentative but warm. "I just wanted to say thank you for showing me, for giving me a chance to understand." I smiled, closing my eyes as the city lights flickered outside my apartment window. "You're welcome," I said. "And thank you, too, for trying." It wasn't perfect. We were still learning, still testing boundaries, still discovering the weight of past mistakes. But the foundation had shifted. This time, it wasn't fear or judgment that guided us. It was respect, accountability, and a willingness to grow together. I clasped the locket one last time and tucked it into my jacket pocket. It wasn't a shield anymore. It was a reminder of resilience, of courage, and of the quiet power in choosing your own path. As I looked out over the city, glass of wine in hand, I smiled to myself. The journey had been long, painful, and beautiful. I had left to find my own life, and in doing so, I had discovered not only who I was, but the strength to rewrite the story I had once thought was written for me. And in that moment, I whispered to no one in particular. The best gift I ever gave was myself.